So today we're going to be taking a look at a bass amp that could possibly prolong the relevance of bass amps. As you guys probably know, I don't do a lot of videos like this where I'm just going through a product and showing a review of it and different things like that. That's not something I really do a lot on this channel. But today, I've been super interested and super curious about this new Quilter Labs bass block V803. And honestly, it is a really cool amp that I wanted to show you guys because I think you guys could really benefit from checking out this cabinet. Now, if you know anything about bass amps, there are three main components that you want to have in an amp today. One is you want it to be versatile. Two, you want it to move air or be very powerful. And three, you want it to be portable. Because if you don't have all three of these, you're probably not gonna use it on a gig. And what's crazy is that this little amp embodies all three of these extremely well. Now, the bass amp that we're looking at today is from a company called Quilter Labs. This is their bass block V803. It just recently came out and it is a beast of an amp. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the amp head. This is a completely analog amp head, which is really dope. It's not one of those things where you're gonna have to update your firmware or anything like that. It's all analog and really nice. A couple of cool functions that it has. It has two inputs, which is, I've never seen this on a bass amp before. It has a regular flat input where you can plug in your bass and it has a flat kind of sound. And then it has the second input, which is a scoop input, which gives you a scooped sound when you plug it into there. Most bass amps have this function, but it's usually with a button. But it's really cool that you can just plug your bass straight into a scoop one and not even have to like worry about hitting a button or anything. It could just say scoop for whatever settings you change on the amp, which is something I've never actually seen on an amp before. Another cool function it has this switch for 3 different amp modes, which is modern, warm, and Q-tube. Pretty much the modern is kind of like more of a solid state sounding, amp mode that you can try out. If you're playing gospel or something like that, it's kind of the place you want to be. The warm is kind of like a tube-ish type of vibe, but it doesn't break up or anything like that, like a normal classic tube amp would. But then you have the third one, which is the Q-tube, which is supposed to be mimicking one of those old school classic style tube amps, which if you push it hard enough, it may break up just a little bit. And that's for those guys who really like that type of tone. Now, something that's super cool is that when you use the 3 amp tones, but plug in to the scooped input, you actually get 3 more voices than like if you just use the flat input. Now, I will be honest, the scooped input is probably my favorite. For some reason, it just sounds really good in this amp. I'm not usually a scoop tone person, but when I plugged into the scoop tone on it, I was actually really impressed, which we'll listen to in just a little bit. But what happens is that once you plug into that scoop tone, it just completely colors in, that makes it your bass sound kind of scooped. And so even if you adjust your EQ, it kind of has like a different tone than just your flat, EQ input. And then also when you hit those different voices like the modern, the warm, or the Q-tube, it has more of a scooped sound instead of just like that flat sound. So really, you get almost 6 different voices when you go through that scooped input. Now below that, it has 3 more functions, which is an active switch, passive switch, and a mute switch. To be honest, I don't really see a lot of active and passive switches on a lot of bass amps nowadays, which I think is something that's been very needed for a lot of these, newer amps today. But it's really cool. So whenever I'm playing my active bass with Asia, my bass mods, my 5-string bass mods, that's got like, it's an active bass. So I just switch to the active setting, and it will compensate for the amount of volume that I'm putting out. Pretty much it'll just pad it a little bit. And then if you have a passive like P bass or a bass like that, you can switch it to the passive setting and it will boost the volume to match where the active would be sitting if it was plugged in as well. Now, when you switch to the mute, it goes to a red light to let you know that it is muted and you can unplug or tune or do whatever you need to do, which is really nice. A couple other things it has on there. It has 2 speak-on outs on the back of the amp. And also it has a DI out, and honestly, that's just a given. If you have a bass amp nowadays, you really need to have some type of DI out, and this one has a really clean one. Now, also on the front part of the amp, which is kind of unusual because most times it's on the back of the amp, is we have a return and send for an effects loop for those who are using pedals and you want to do a loop function like that. It's really interesting that they have it on the front panel. It's usually always on the back panel of most amps, but I do kind of like that it's on the front because it's just, you can see where it's hooked up and it's not like in the back and kind of in the dark of where, oh, I don't know if I hooked it up in the right place. It's just really right there in front of your eyes. Now, the last output on the front panel of the amp is the headphone out, which is really nice. It's a 1/4 inch out. You can hook up your headphones directly to it. And I know it has like a little bit of an amp sim to kind of help, you know, push out the volume so it's not just like a dry signal. It actually boosts the volume so you can hear it in your headphones a lot easier. So like I said at the beginning of the video, you want an amp that can push some power. And this amp is so small, but it pushes 800 watts of power, which is nuts. Basically, if you wanted to use this amp, right now I'm using this Quilter Labs 112 cabinet, which sounds great, but if you wanted to push for a 410 cabinet, it could push it easy. If you want to push an 810 cabinet, you could push it pretty easy. And that is coming from this little tiny amp, which is just so crazy to me. And so if you're looking for something with some power, this thing really does have some power. Like I said, the 3 functions you want: versatility, power, and then also portability. I will say that's what's really cool about this particular amp head, is that you can separate it from this cabinet and use it with whatever cabinet you want to use it on. You don't have to have this necessarily, this Quilter Labs cabinet to be able to work. Now, I will say the Quilter Labs cabinet actually is really cool. I haven't really seen many cabinets like this. And this is the reason why I think this is kind of like a cool thing that keeps bass amps relevant, is that now with these combo amps, they found a way to where you can have an amp head and also have a cabinet and interchange those. Because it used to be like if you have a combo amp, you're pretty much stuck and you can't take your amp out of it. It's just like locked into the cabinet. But with this type of technology with this cabinet and amp, is that you can slide in the head amp into the cabinet and tighten up some screws really easily and simply to be able to just use this one or take it out and use a different one. And I really like that function, which this is the first I've seen of this on an amp like this. Now, there may be others out there, so don't, kill me in the comments and be like, oh, that's not the first one to do that. But this is just the first one I've personally used like this, and I think it is a huge game changer. Now, the last thing about the cabinet, it has a handle on the top so you can carry it on the gig super easily. And honestly, this being a 112 is so small, I could fit it in any vehicle, my back seat, my front seat, the floorboard. Like, it's pretty easy to take anywhere in any type of vehicle. But what's really cool is that it really pushes power like crazy when you're on stage, even though it's like a little 112 cabinet. So now on the front panel of this cabinet, you have some normal functions you see on a bass amp, which is a gain knob and a 3-band EQ, which is lows, mids, and highs. But on your mids, you have a mid selector where you can select the frequency and boost it, whatever frequency you want to use. And it's really dope because I will say, like, having that and just being able to, find whatever mid frequency you want to push is so nice when you're EQing your amp. It also has a master knob that helps push your volume without it breaking up. And I really love that, especially when I'm playing R&B or gospel style music. So the last switch is a ground lift and auto switch for if you need a ground lift or not when you're playing on a gig. Now, before we get back to the video, I want to make a quick mention of today's sponsor, Neewer. If you don't know what Neewer is or what the company is, it's basically a company that creates products for us video creators out here to help us get really great video content to post on social media, and also for my video production people as well. So today I'm using a lot of Neewer equipment. I've been using Neewer equipment for years since I've been on this channel. Today I'm using their slider that just came out to help with these amp shots that look very cool, and they're very smooth and different things like that. Man, it has been a huge help. And also something I've also been using is their tripod it's like a desk tripod, but you can use it in so many different ways. I use it on my desk. I'll also use it handheld, and then I'll also use it as just kind of like a regular tripod that's a little bit, it's a little bit shorter than a full-size tripod, but it's perfect for a lot of situations you don't even realize. And then the last thing that I always have been using that's been a godsend if you know about doing videos is their teleprompter. Probably one of the best teleprompters I think I've ever used. It's got a huge screen and canvas that you can use to project your scripts and different things like that on, and it has really been a godsend. So if you guys are interested in any of the equipment I use or just want to check out the site itself, click on my link in the description below to where you can see all of the gear that they have to offer. So let's get back into the video. So now we're gonna do an audio test on this amp to hear what it sounds like. This is always my favorite part of this type of video. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do one with a microphone in front of the amp, and then I'm gonna do one that's a direct from the direct out of the amp going straight into my DAW. And this is all gonna be dry, just straight from the amp into my software. I have no plugins on it or anything like that, so you guys can get a real true sense of the tone out of this amp. And the last part of this is I'm gonna use an active and a passive bass so you can kind of hear the differences in tone. Now, if I had to say who this bass amp is for, it's probably for those who play on gigs or gigging musicians, or ones who play at a church or somewhere on a regular basis. And honestly, this is a great practice amp too, but if you're practicing at home with this, you're probably gonna have this on a 1, like, because it's so powerful. It's 800 watts, so it could push way bigger than a 112 cabinet. And so that's what I wouldn't say is necessarily made to be a practice amp, but it's really made to be used on the road. And it's only about, I think about $600 or $700 for this amp head. So I would definitely go check it out. It's at a really great price point right now. Honestly, if you are a gigging musician, this is a great one to have in your arsenal. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're interested in this amp, check it out in the link in my description below. Also, a huge thanks to Quilter Labs for sending this amp over to me. This was one that I've definitely been wanting to check out for quite a while now. And if you like this video, feel free to go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. And also, let me know in the comments if you like this amp or if you have any other amps that you want to see me do a video on in the comments below. And also, if you want to support this channel, feel free to check out my website, travisdykesmusic.com, where you can find and make a purchase of any product on there to help support this channel and bring you more videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.